Hello and welcome to Cultural Wealth Wednesdays. I'm thrilled you joined us today for what I believe will be a transformative conversation about recognizing, honoring, and leveraging the incredible assets that exist within our diverse communities. I'm Dr. Crystal L. Clemens, founder and CEO of Our Village Consulting, and I've dedicated over 15 years of my career to a simple but powerful belief. Every student, every family, and every community possesses incredible wealth that, when recognized and cultivated, can transform educational outcomes. As someone who has spent my career in school counseling and counselor education, I've witnessed firsthand how traditional deficit-based thinking can limit our vision of what's possible. But I've also seen the magic that happens when we shift our perspective to recognize the cultural wealth that surrounds us every day. Cultural Wealth Wednesdays is our weekly space to explore, celebrate, and learn how to leverage the diverse forms of capital that exist in our communities, what researcher Tara Yasso calls community cultural wealth. We're talking about the aspirational capital that drives families to dream big for their children, the linguistic capital found in multilingual households, the familial capital that creates strong support networks, the social capital built through community connections, the navigational capital that helps families persist through challenges, and the resistant capital that emerges from communities advocating for change. Each Wednesday, we'll dive deep into practical strategies for identifying cultural wealth in your school or community, building authentic partnerships that honor diverse perspectives, creating programming that builds on existing community assets, challenging systems that perpetuate deficit thinking, and developing your own cultural competence as an educator or leader. Cultural Wealth Wednesdays isn't just about changing how we think. It's about changing how we act. It's about building the kind of inclusive, asset-based educational communities where every child can thrive. So let's begin this journey together. Let's challenge ourselves to see wealth where others might see deficits. Let's build bridges where others might see barriers. Let's create the villages our children deserve. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Cultural Wealth Wednesday. Thank you so much for continuing to engage with this series and leaving feedback on what you're learning and everything that you enjoy about the series. So today, we're going to discuss something that is very timely right now, and that is the holiday season, right? So we need to discuss the holiday season and the incredible cultural wealth that our students and families bring to this time of year. So let's start with a question. What does the holiday season mean to you? For some people, it's the Christmas trees and carols and the birth of Jesus. And for other people, it's the menorah, it's Hanukkah, right? For some, it's celebrating Kwanzaa and the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. For others, it's observing and celebrating the winter solstice, or just simply being with your families over a meal. And for some people, it's just December's just another month. And for others, it's the most sacred time of year. So this is what we know, right? Contrary to popular belief and opinion, the holiday season is not monolithic, right? Even though everywhere you look is jingle bells and Christmas tree ornaments and Mariah Carey's numbers getting run up, and she makes $1 billion at the beginning, what is it, November 1st of every year? Her streams run up for All I Want for Christmas Is You. We know that Christmas saturates our society, but that's not the only holiday that is being celebrated at this time of the year. And again, our schools tend to default to one narrative, right? The red and green, the Santa, snowflakes, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all of those things, right? I don't know about some of you, but I recall very clearly being in elementary school and having a Christmas play. Not a holiday play, but a Christmas play. And so even though I do celebrate Christmas, I had classmates and friends who celebrated other holidays like Eid or even Hanukkah, right? Or some didn't even celebrate at all. And so today we're going to reframe the holiday season through community cultural wealth, right? We're going to explore how each of these forms of capital, the 6 forms that we've already talked about before, how do each one of these 6 forms of capital show up in our students' holiday traditions? And more importantly, how can we honor and leverage this wealth in our schools? Okay, so let's first, again, discuss the difference between a strengths-based approach and a deficit-based approach. And we know that Dr. Yasso's community cultural wealth model challenges deficit-based thinking because it is a strengths-based model, right? It challenges that deficit-based thinking that students of color, immigrant students, students from other minoritized and marginalized communities are lacking cultural capital and are therefore not wealthy. So the deficit thinking here says these students don't have family support, they don't value education, and they're missing out on important cultural experiences. But cultural wealth says these students still bring rich traditions and multilingual abilities, strong family networks, survival skills, and resistance strategies that are our strengths and not our deficits. So the holiday season, there may be a lot of deficit at that time of the year, at this time of the year rather, right? It may be some families can't afford to celebrate, or they don't know about Christmas traditions, or they're missing out on the holiday spirit, whatever that is, right? But when we think of it through the lens of the strengths-based cultural wealth model, we're going to reframe it and look at it like this: as all families have traditions that are worth celebrating, regardless of economic resources. Our families and our students practice diverse winter and year end traditions that enrich the school community. There are so many ways to mark this time of year and to mark this season with meaning and joy. And we need to honor each one of those ways that our students and families bring to our communities. So let's dive into each form of the capital and let's see how it shows up during the holidays. Okay, so let's talk about aspirational capital. As a reminder, I'll tell you what it is. So, aspirational capital is the ability to maintain hopes and dreams for the future, even in the face of real and perceived barriers. So, what does that look like during the holidays? New Year's goal setting, right? How many people have seen vision boards? Some folks have vision board parties on New Year's Eve, setting your vision and intention for the next year, right? But what does that look like across traditions? Well, Latin American families, again, they write wishes. Some of them may write some wishes and burn them at midnight. Chinese New Year traditions of cleaning the house to sweep away bad luck and make room for good fortune. A lot of times in my own community, the Black American community, watch night service. And those of us who grew up in the Black church, so let me be clear again, not just the Black American community, but the Black American community rooted in the part that's rooted in the Black church, we would have watch night service. So that's going to church on New Year's Eve. Now, for some people, that's what you do is the last day of the year. But the true origin of watch night service is back when we were enslaved, and we were waiting for January 1st, 1863. That was when the Emancipation Proclamation would kick in. And so we were watching the night before, waiting for that to kick in. And so now that tradition has continued and evolved a little bit, and now it takes place in the forms of Black church traditions, which is watch night service. And that is again rooted in anticipating new beginnings and rooted in anticipating freedom. It also shows up in the Black American community by making sure your house is clean before the new year comes, and also eating cornbread, black eyed peas, collard greens, and tomatoes on New Year's Day. Parents sacrificing to give children holiday experiences that they didn't have, right? Working multiple jobs to buy gifts or to travel, creating traditions from scratch in a new country. We have so many immigrants that come to our country legally. I want to put that out there. They come legally. And even if they come illegally, they're working to make it legal. And so they're coming to a new country and they want to bring their traditions with them. And so sometimes they even have to create new traditions from scratch in this new country. Students setting intentions for the new year despite challenges. You may have students looking at their grades over the fall semester saying, okay, I can't do that again. What am I going to do differently moving forward in the new year? So they're setting their intention for the new year despite any challenges that they may have encountered, right? Hoping for better grades, safer neighborhoods, and even family reunions. Because again, that familial capital is important, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. So how do we honor this in schools? So let's create space for students to share their hopes and dreams for the new year. Again, I talked about vision boards, goal setting activities, letters to their future selves. I'm talking to you, school counselors. These are amazing school counseling classroom lesson activities. Acknowledge that hope is a form of resistance and resilience when we shouldn't be resilient, when we shouldn't be hopeful for the future we are. And that in itself is challenging the status quo. Inviting families to share the traditions that focus on the future, right? So sometimes, again, black eyed peas, uh, cornbread, collard greens, those are our some of our food traditions, right? But other cultures may have other food traditions that they have to bring in the new year. Linguistic capital. So we're talking about these multilingual celebrations and storytelling. And storytelling is an important and crucial component of linguistic capital. When we think of this time of the year, what do we hear a lot about? Stories. So many stories. Whether it's the story of the birth of Jesus, mashed up from the different gospels to make that one narrative we're all familiar with, or stories about jolly old Saint Nick, right? Stories about uh, what actually took place for Hanukkah. Stories about Frosty the Snowman. A lot of our Christmas songs that we sing are nothing but stories. The whole story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is that's the story. One Christmas Eve, after poor little Rudolph had been made fun of because he was different. He had that shiny nose, and all the other reindeer made fun of him. But then on that one day, Christmas Eve, it was foggy, and Santa said, "Okay, your difference is going to make a difference." We use that to highlight how differences are special in our communities and with our students, right? That's a story that we hear a lot around this time of the year. So, again, how else does it show up? Again, so many different languages have songs, so many different cultures have their own holiday songs. Feliz Navidad, right? We sing that all the time at this time of year. Different songs like Joyeux Noel, different sayings, learning how to say Merry Christmas, peace, happy holidays in different languages, right? Hanukkah blessings in Hebrew, or even the Kwanzaa principles recited in Swahili. This is how our songs, our prayers, and our greetings show up through linguistic capital. Again, our storytelling traditions, sharing the origin stories of our traditions in their first language, right? Or even children serving as translators between the generations. These things are really important and they highlight how linguistic capital is really, really important this time of year. Code switching between your home and your school celebration. In school, you may not be able to talk about the birth of Jesus specifically, right? Because of the separation of church and state. But when you get home, you're going to Christmas Eve service at church, right? So, thinking about these things, thinking about how all of this shows up in our own personal everyday lives. But then, how can we honor this in a school setting? Multilingual holiday displays in the hallways and the classrooms, right? Where before, some of you may remember the angel tree, and some many places still have angel trees where it's an actual Christmas tree set up with the angels, paper angels hanging on the tree with a gender, an age, a request, whether it's for a toy or clothing, because you want to bless other people this time of the year. We have changed the name of that from an angel tree to a giving tree, because angel tree leaned too heavily on the Christmas tradition, which would alienate and ostracize families who don't celebrate Christmas but are still in need. So we have changed the name of that from angel tree to giving tree. So let's also put up our giving trees. Let's invite the students and families to teach the class holiday greetings or songs in different languages. If you're a music teacher in whatever, whether it's elementary school, you're the general music teacher, or if you specialize in, let's say, strings and orchestra or band or chorus, this is a great time of year. Many music professionals in the schools love this time of year because it's so rich with tradition and so rich with culture. My own mother started as an elementary music school teacher. And fun fact, one year my brother and I wrote her class Christmas play, her school Christmas play. Another story for another time. But this time of year was so special to her because she got to really incorporate many, many cultures in one program. Let's create holidays around the world where each language is honored equally, not as exotic, not othered, but equally valuable to our dominant traditions here in this country. Create a bulletin board, a program, whatever it is that looks right in your community or your school. If you have a school podcast, a school video series, morning announcements, even, that's a great time to pause and invite students to share a holiday story in their own language, of course, with translation. But that's a great way to highlight every day during this time of year the different holidays, the different traditions and cultures that are in your school and community. Familial capital. And we know this time of year we think a lot about our families, right? Our cultural knowledge that is passed down from to us linguistically using that linguistic capital. And this time of year is when we gather as families. Some people, you may live away from your home of origin, but this time of year, you always find a way to make it back home. And how does that again show up during the holidays? Well, recipes passed down through generations. I'll give you a great example. My late paternal grandfather made a mean sweet potato pie. So good. That recipe was passed to my brother, who has memorized it, and he makes our grandfather's sweet potato pies every year for the holidays. My grandfather has been gone for 25 years, but his pies continue because that recipe has been passed down through the generations, and in the future, my brother's going to pass it to his children. Latkes during Hanukkah with maybe your grandmother or great grandmother's recipe, right? Jollof rice during West African Christmas celebrations. We're not going to get into the age time honored debate of which country's jollof rice is better, Nigeria or Ghana. We're not going to have that conversation. We're just going to say all of the jollof rice that anybody can cook is delicious because it is. But this is a holiday tradition in West African families. Storytelling, talking about how do we used to celebrate. Elders sharing the memories of holidays in their home country of origin or even just when they were kids, right? Parents explaining why they celebrate differently than their own parents, or even passing down those traditions. A tradition I've passed down, my parents used to fill my stocking and my brother's stocking with different fruits, candies, and nuts. I have carried on that tradition with my own children. And on Christmas morning, they can expect different fruits, different candies. Not any nuts. I have a child with a nut allergy, so no nuts, but little toys, little trinkets, little things here and there. But their stockings are full because that's what my parents did for me. Family roles and responsibilities. What kind of things do we do during this time of year? So sometimes the older siblings may help the younger ones write letters to Santa if they still believe in Santa, right? They might write those letters to Santa Claus and help write the letters for Santa Claus. Everyone contributes to decorating the home. Everyone contributes to decorating the Christmas tree or putting up the wreath or putting up the stockings. Some of you may not be able to tell, I am not the tallest person in the world. So I never put the star on top of the Christmas tree. That is a job for my husband to do since he's much taller than me, right? But that's a family role and responsibility. And so how do we honor this in the schools? How about a family recipe exchange, right? Kids, families, staff, faculty, folks bring in recipes that are from their family traditions, from their cultural traditions, and share them. Sharing culture at this time of year is so special. And that is a wonderful way to do so because one thing we know, we as a people, and by a people, I just mean human beings, we love to eat. Bringing in family recipes and have an exchange to share our culture during this time of year. Invite family members to share their traditions in person or via video if they can't make it in person, right? And also, what's really important here is to acknowledge that families look different. all families, they may look different for everybody, whether it's your chosen family, your foster families, single parent households, the grandparents raising the grandchildren, all have wisdom to share. My own family, I have my nucleus, my husband, myself, and my children, but then we have our larger family, my parents, my brother, my sister in law, my nieces, my brothers in law, right? My niece and nephew, my mother in law. But then larger than that, right? My cousins, my aunt and uncle. We all gather together and we celebrate the holidays together. And so for us, we have a family potluck every Christmas and also every Thanksgiving. Everybody cooks something and brings it in, and we all share together our family meal because that is our tradition as our family. And so acknowledging that for some, family might just be two people, and for others, family might mean 50 people in one household, but it's all special and it's all important. And that is what our familial capital is all about. Social capital. Now we know we're talking about our social networks, right? Our community resources that provide that instrumental and emotional support. So how does this show up during the holidays? What about our community-based celebrations? Our town Christmas tree lighting that people, some towns and cities tend to have a central Christmas tree lighting, and everybody goes to it, or a Christmas parade in your town or your home that may have different maybe dance troops or Girl Scout, Boy Scout troops, or things like that. Everybody is doing their holiday, the holiday parade, right? Community-based Other community-based celebrations might be churches, mosques, temples, community centers hosting gatherings, right? Many churches may have live nativity scenes that they have outside, even in the cold, and folks can drive by to see this live nativity scene. They may put on Christmas plays at the church. They may have a Hanukkah play at the local temple, right? Kwanzaa celebrations, lighting of the Kinara, right? That is a very sacred tradition that many in Black American families take part in, and Black American communities take part in. And again, local cultural organizations hosting festivals. So many different places have Christmas markets where very similar to like a farmer's market, but it's geared toward Christmas and the holiday season. And so that there's also mutual aid and gift sharing, right? I talked earlier about the giving tree, right? Communities pooling resources to ensure that every child has gifts. Many school districts and school communities have toy drives, right? Toy lifts, toy drives, clothing drives, food drives to ensure that people have a safe, happy, and healthy holiday season, right? Everybody contributing what they can for the less fortunate, because this is also a time of year where we think about those who may not be as fortunate as us to not work. Some of us may not have to worry about what we're going to eat for the holiday or providing gifts to children or anything like that. But there are people who do worry about those things. And so the beauty of this season is that people tend to not think about themselves. They look outward and say, how can I help this time of year? And so this mutual aid and gift sharing is a wonderful way that we leverage our social capital to help everyone in need during this time of year. So how do we honor this in schools? Toy drives, toy lifts, winter celebrations, unity day, uh, food pantry volunteering. This is a wonderful time of year, particularly for our high schoolers. Again, school counselors, I'm talking to you. For our high schoolers who need community service hours for college or whatever higher education, or should I say post-secondary endeavor they may be looking to pursue, that may require some community service hours. So this is a perfect time of year to accrue many community service hours. So organizing, like I said, the toy lift, the giving tree, food pantry drives, clothing drives, coat drives, whatever it may be, going to the local elementary school as high schoolers, going in and volunteering, right? All of these things, drawing strength from the family and the community during this time of year, and helping everyone in the community. Let everyone know that even in this time of year, especially in this time of year, they matter too. And that's really, really important, right? Secret Santa as well. Sometimes instead of doing a toy lift or a toy drive, we might do a Secret Santa. Because one thing about Secret Santa, that does ensure that everyone gets a gift. So think about how our social capital can show up in our schools during this time of year, and the many, many ways we can ensure that all will have a very happy and healthy holiday season. Navigational capital. This one might be a little bit more difficult because we're talking about how we have to maneuver through the dominant holiday culture. I've talked about before how, especially in schools and just larger society, even on commercials, right? When we're talking about the holiday season, it's focused on one holiday. Think about the commercials during this time of year. What holiday are they focused on? Think about the M&Ms and Santa. He does exist. They do exist, and then they fall out. They faint. That's Christmas. Hershey's Kisses, the bells, the red and green Hershey's Kisses, ringing the bells, playing "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." The Coca-Cola bears, right? So many, though we would call them vintage commercials that really signal the holiday season. Some of you, like myself, might be old enough to remember Fruity Pebbles and the Christmas commercial with the Fruity Pebbles and Fred and Barney, and Fred never wanting to share his Fruity Pebbles and Santa making Fred share his Fruity Pebbles with Barney. Like all of these things, but it's geared and focused on Christmas. What about folks who don't celebrate Christmas, right? So learning how to navigate through the dominant holiday culture during this time of year. So thinking about maybe what does it look like? Again, code switching, home, tradition versus in school. In school, they might be talking about Christmas traditions, but at home, they might celebrate Hanukkah or Diwali, right? Or Eid. Or even explaining to peers, and this is a big one. Kids who don't celebrate Christmas having to explain to their peers why they don't celebrate Christmas without feeling othered. So, this is where we as the educators have to advocate for inclusion for all students. Asking teachers, hey, can we learn about all of the different holiday traditions at this time of year? Requesting that schools don't assume that everybody celebrates Christmas because everybody doesn't. And I'm saying this as someone who celebrates Christmas. Everybody doesn't. You may have folks who are Jehovah Witnesses who don't celebrate any holidays, right? But what type of microaggressions are our children and families dealing with at this time of year? Not just in larger society, but even within the school space. You might have kids who come to the school assuming that everybody celebrates Christmas and might start asking kids questions like, don't you feel like you're missing out? Why don't you believe in Santa? You're not going to get any gifts, and saying negative things to these students who don't celebrate Christmas. How are we as educators going to help manage those types of microaggressions? And so, again, we need to critically examine our holiday practices. Are we centering Christianity by default? Because centering Christmas technically is centering Christianity. And I'm saying this as a practicing Christian, but everybody isn't. So we need to be able to honor everyone. What do our decorations represent? Is it diversity or tokenism? Are we putting up a menorah just to say we have one up? Are we putting up Kwanzaa decorations just to say we have them up? Or are they as equally valued as Christmas? A lot of schools now, instead of calling it Christmas break, they call it winter break. So we are already beginning to change that language to make it more inclusive and acknowledge that it is a winter break and not a Christmas break. Instead of saying Christmas traditions, call them family traditions and ask, how does your family celebrate this time of year? Does your family celebrate this time of year? If so, what does your family celebrate this time of year? Don't ask what you're doing for Christmas because they might not be doing anything. They don't celebrate. So we have to also teach these navigational skills very explicitly. Have discussions about how students can respond to questions about their traditions, and also have larger lessons and larger discussions about equally treating people the same when it comes to tradition, honoring everyone's tradition at this time of year, not looking down on them for not celebrating one over the other, but honoring everyone's traditions. Resistant capital. If you haven't figured out by now, this is one of my favorite ones. Because with this, we're going to challenge the dominant holiday narrative. We have to look at alternatives to a commercialized Christmas. So how does it show up during the holidays? We talked about Kwanzaa, winter solstice, buy nothing holidays. Some people just choose to buy nothing and focus on experience over gifts, right? We have to discuss how to reclaim and preserve traditions that are threatened by colonization. For example, indigenous communities celebrate the winter solstice, right? We need to be able to honor that historically. And talking about how immigrant families fiercely protect their own traditions as acts of cultural survival. Do not, I repeat, do not expect, do not require assimilation. Because this is the time of year where we focus on our own families, our own cultures, our own traditions. Don't assume everybody celebrates the same thing. And even if they do celebrate the same thing, don't assume that everybody celebrates it the same way. This is a time of year also where we teach children about justice through a holiday lens, of course, right? What are the 7 principles of Kwanzaa? What are they? And how do they apply to everyday life, to everyone, not just Black people, but everybody, right? Use those 7 principles of Kwanzaa to discuss community building, self-determination, and collective work. How about discussing St. Nicholas instead of jolly old St. Nick? St. Nicholas was a defender of the poor. Jolly old St. Nick is a commercialized Santa Claus. If we discuss the origin of St. Nicholas and who he actually was as a person, that is honoring who St. Nicholas was, why he is important, and that is engaging in resisting capital because we're resisting talking about jolly old St. Nick. We're going to discuss St. Nicholas, who was a defender of the poor. And also, we need to explore how holidays are used to distract from systemic issues. Just because it's the holiday season, that doesn't mean that systemic issues pause. If anything, the holiday season highlights systemic issues. Because if it weren't for systemic issues, we wouldn't need giving trees. We wouldn't need toy lifts or toy drives or food drives or clothing drives. We wouldn't need those things. But because of systemic issues, this time of year we have those things to make sure everyone has, like I said before, a healthy, happy holiday season. How do we honor this in the schools? Again, let's teach the origins critically. Why was Kwanzaa created? Right? How have indigenous winter traditions survived colonization? What does it mean that so many holiday traditions are commercialized? What is the origin of Hanukkah? What is the origin of Diwali? What is the origin of Eid? Discuss historically and critically the origins of these holidays and trace the consumerism and the commercialism. Create the space for counter narratives. Allow students to critique, invite them to critique, invite them to question the dominant holiday culture. Let's discuss the holiday industrial complex that push to buy for consumerism. Kids today have no idea what it was like when Tickle Me Elmo first came out. And some of you watching this, you remember Tickle Me Elmo. People were elbowing for Elmo, throwing bows. They don't remember the days of Black Friday when we would get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to get in line to shop at whether it's a store, the mall, whatever. They don't know about that. But let's discuss what that looked like back then and why that was the case because of consumerism and commercialism, right? Again, we also need to make sure that we do not punish students for non-participation because they may not celebrate. They just may not celebrate. And that's okay. That's their tradition, is to not have one sometimes. And that's all right. Provide alternatives without making them feel isolated. We talked about how we center Christianity and Christmas during this time of year, but we need to give equal attention to Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Diwali, Eid, Lunar New Year, and indigenous ceremonies, among others. Because we're all important. We're all celebrating something. Not all of us are celebrating something this time of year, but those who do celebrate are not all celebrating the same thing. And we need to be able to honor each one equally and value each one equally. So let's bring it together. What does a culturally wealth-based holiday season look like in a school, right? It's the classroom where all traditions are visible, not add-ons to Christmas, but equally valued celebrations. The lessons that explore the why behind the traditions, not just the what. And these lessons invite critical thinking and cultural pride. Events that are not focused on just one religion or just one culture, but they create space for all to feel seen. Language that is intentionally inclusive. For example, again, saying, what does your family celebrate instead of assuming that your family celebrates. Opportunities for students to share all of their forms of cultural capital. And the affirmation that celebrating is also okay. Not celebrating is also okay. And the students should not feel othered for their family's choices. And educators have to reflect on our own biases and our own blind spots about the holidays. So take a moment, self reflect. Which forms of cultural capital do I personally draw on during the holiday season? What traditions, languages, practices, or community connections sustain me? These are the things I want you to be thinking about. How do I currently honor or fail to honor diverse holiday traditions in my classroom or counseling practice? And what is one concrete change I can make this year to center cultural wealth during the holidays? So let's close with this. The holiday season is not a time to tolerate diversity, it's the time to celebrate it and learn from it and be transformed by it. Because every student in your classroom carries cultural wealth. Some light candles, some fast, some feast. Some gather quietly, some sing loudly, some travel, some stay home, some give gifts, some give time, some celebrate nothing at all, and it's all beautiful. And our job as educators and counselors is not to make each student fit into one holiday mold. Our job is to say, you matter, your tradition matters, your language matters, your family matters, your resistance matters, and you belong here. When we honor cultural wealth during the holidays, we don't just make students feel included. We teach all students that the world is bigger, richer, and more beautiful than any single tradition could contain. And so your cultural wealth Wednesday challenge is fully look at how do you celebrate your own holiday tradition and how do you make room for others to celebrate as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And happy holidays, however you celebrate or don't celebrate.